Hello my friends. In today's video I'm going to try to make a watercolor of this beautiful photo. I found this on Instagram on a site called Three Brothers Blooms. I'll put the link down below in the description so you can go see. They have beautiful pictures of flowers every day, so there's so much inspiration. And this one I really loved the background. I really loved the petals with the pink to the yellow. So I'm going to see if I can try to replicate it. It's not going to look exactly like it. I mean, it's not a photo, it's a painting, but this is my inspiration. So I'm going to keep it close by. And the first thing that I did, and I'm not sure if you can see it very well, is I sketched the flower. So I sketched all the petals very lightly in pencil. And so I have that here ready for me to go in and do each individual petal, because this is going to be a bit of a slower process. The first thing I want to do is do the background. So I'm going to ignore the hand. It's a very lovely hand, but I'm going to just make it all this background color, this gray blue. And so I've been mixing indigo with a little bit of Payne's gray. It's not exactly the background color, but I do like the touch of blue in it. So I'm going to try this one and see how it goes. So I'm just basically going to fill in all of the background. And this one I didn't tape down. I'm going to see if this works. I cut my Arches cold press 100% cotton paper into a square. Hopefully you can see it. And I'll put the dimensions down below. I can't remember. It might be 12 by 12 possibly, 12 by 12 inches. And I'm just going to avoid all my petals and just try to do some of the watery background color. And maybe we'll have to do more than one layer. We'll see. So let's get started. This is always a scary part, putting water to paper, watercolor to paper. Okay. So just to remind you, this is what it kind of looks like. It's a gray blue. Here we go. Trying to get as close as I can to my lines. Can always go in with a smaller brush afterwards. I think putting a little bit of water will make it spread nicely too. Let's try. I'll just do one little piece at a time. Sorry, I should be talking. Yeah, it's very satisfying to add to a large area like this. And I do want to make the color, it always dries a little bit lighter. So we might come back in when it's not completely dry, but a little bit more dry, and add in a little bit more color, because right now it's just spreading quite a bit. But overall, I do like that. Can't tell where my petal ends here. I think it goes up here. No, I think it does not. I think it goes like this. Yes, see, my lines are so light, I can almost not see them, and I don't want to lose the details that I had here. Here I'm getting very close to the edge. That's okay. There we go. I like this color a lot. This is an Indigo by Winsor Newton. I love their Indigo. And also Payne's Gray by Winsor Newton. So that's the colors I'm using so far. I'll put a list of my supplies down below. Let's see, how does it go here? Hard to see. Okay. Where does this petal end? I think it goes like this. Okay, let's add a little bit more water because I like that effect. And a little bit more of the paint. Oh, that's lovely. Look how it spreads. I decided to speed up this part because it's more of the same. So I'm continuing to add a little bit of water and some paint, some pigment to allow that background to be very diffuse and kind of airy looking. Later on I did actually add another layer of color to it, but I think I prefer the way it looked at this point actually. So hope you enjoy this. Once the background was completely dry, I went in and added some Titan buff to each of the petals. That's kind of the very pale yellow color that you see on each of the petals. And before it was completely dry, I would add a little bit of the pink just around the edges to allow it to bleed a little bit into the petal. Then I let each petal dry before I added more details. At this point I started adding some of the green to the stem and the leaves, and I did this in a few layers. So this is the first layer, and then I went back in and made it a little bit darker later on. While the leaves, the petals were drying a little bit, I went in and did some of the other petals above. So as you can see, I'm kind of letting each individual petal dry before I tackle one that's beside it, so that the colors don't bleed and so that each petal really does look distinct. And for each one I'm doing the same sort of technique. I'm adding that pale Titan buff, allowing it to dry just a little bit so it's not completely wet. Then I go in with the pink around the edges to give it that little edge of the petal and blend it in a little bit to the rest of the petal. And then I let each of those dry completely, and I come back in and added some of the detailed lines that you'll see later on. This is what it looks like. Now I'm adding more of the greenery just to the distinct petals there. And then I will go in and continue to add petals. This is a very slow process, but it takes patience. It's not difficult, it just takes patience to do this kind of painting. It's very relaxing, the process. You're doing something similar with each of the petals, but each one is very unique. I mean, it's almost like you're not painting an entire flower all at once. You're painting one petal at a time, so you really just focus on the details for that one petal and try to get the shadows of the pink and the lines and kind of the curvature of each petal into it as much as you can. So it is enjoyable, but it does take time. So I wouldn't say that this is necessarily a beginner painting to start with. I think start with something a little bit easier if you haven't been painting for very long, but it's definitely doable. So it just, as I said, takes that patience. In some cases I went back in with some of that Titan buff just to add a little bit of a darker shade to it. So I actually added a little bit of purple to my Titan buff and a little bit of pink, and you can kind of see that in that mixture that you see me adding now. That was to try to get some of the underside of the petals that have a little bit more of the shadow and are a little bit more darker really because of that shadow. And as I'm doing the strokes, I'm also trying to follow kind of the petal curvature as well as much as I can. I did go in and add a little bit more of that pinkness. You can see that it dries quite a bit lighter than when you first apply the paint. So don't be afraid to go back in and add more layers. You can overwork a painting, that's true, but do keep going back to it with a new eye the next day and see if it needs a little bit more somewhere. And that's what I did with this one. This one took several days to complete. So, yep, same kind of technique with each of the petals. And this is what it looks like at this point. So I sped this part up a little bit more. It's more of the same, adding more petals, more details, a little bit more pink as well. For this part, I went in and now added some of the details to each of the petals. So you can see I'm emphasizing the pink around the edges of each of the petal a little bit more. So I re-wet just the edge and added a little bit more pink. And now I'm adding with a very, very tiny brush. This is like with 4 zeros, the size of the brush. I'm adding some of those little lines that you would see, the veining, both in that Titan buff as well as in the pink. So I'm going through each of the petals and doing the same kind of additions of a little more pink around the edges and some of those lines in that very pale color, and then the pink as well. And that really does give it definition and depth. Up close, you can always see some faults with it, and if I look at it really close up, you know, I'm my worst critic, and I think I could have been more careful with some of the lines, but from far away it really does give it a dramatic effect, all those little lines. So take the time and try adding some of those, and you'll see what it adds to it. So this is what it looked like after I added all the details. I have to say I stopped filming after a while. I thought it was just more of the same. It wouldn't be of interest to you, so I actually find it easier to paint when I'm not recording. I guess I'm just self-conscious when I do the recording. But I did the same technique, so adding more of those detailed lines throughout. When I was done, I thought I would just add the stamen, that's the middle part of the flower, in gold pen, and I thought that would be a nice effect. And you can see it here, but it's very, very faint. So after that was completely done, I actually went back and added yellow paint. So I went back and added yellow paint to the gold lines that I had drawn before, and I think it looks much better, much truer to the actual picture here. I did go and add a little bit of more background color, the blue. I do like the dark blue, but I like the effect that I had at the beginning of the video, so if I could go back I might not have added the second layer, but that's okay. I do like the finished painting quite a bit. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you found it helpful and you give it a try. Please consider subscribing, and I hope to see you again soon. Thank you.